to the theropods, the meat-eaters, the T-Rex and its kin, because for 150 million years they represented the absolute pinnacle of what a large land predator could be. And when the asteroid ended their reign 66 million years ago, it's tempting to think that the age of truly enormous land carnivores ended with them, that nothing since has ever matched those dinosaurian giants. But that's not quite true, because long after the dinosaurs were gone, in the relatively recent past, a time when our own ancestors already walked the earth, a mammal evolved on the continent of South America that grew to a size that put it in direct competition with the great predatory dinosaurs themselves. An animal so massive that when you place its weight next to a famous dinosaur, the Allosaurus, the lion of the Jurassic, the numbers come out almost identical. It was a bear, the largest bear that has ever lived. And today I want to introduce you to it, because the idea that a bear could stand shoulder to shoulder in sheer mass with an animal we think of as a dinosaur-sized monster is one of the most astonishing facts in all of paleontology. Its name is Arctotherium angustidens, the South American giant short-faced bear. And to understand just how staggering it was, we need to talk numbers. Real ones, because this is a channel that cares about getting them right. The story of the record breaker begins, as so many great fossil discoveries do, by accident. In La Plata City, in Argentina, a construction crew digging the foundations for a hospital broke into the ground and uncovered enormous fossilized bones. Those bones made their way to the local museum, where they sat and were eventually studied in detail by paleontologists Leopoldo Soibelzon and Blaine Schubert. And when they measured the leg bones, the humerus, the great bone of the upper forelimb, and ran them through the established equations that estimate an animal's body mass from its skeleton, they arrived at a figure that made this individual the largest bear ever recorded anywhere in the history of the earth. This bear, an old male who had clearly lived a long and violent life, his bones show serious healed injuries, weighed in at an estimated 1,588 to 1,749 kilograms. That's somewhere between about 3,500 and 3,850 pounds. And standing up on its hind legs, it would have reached at least 11 feet tall, 3 1/3 meters. 11 feet. Imagine standing at the base of a basketball hoop and looking up at the rim. This bear's head would have been up there. A modern Kodiak bear, or a big polar bear, the largest bears alive today, themselves genuinely enormous animals, weighs perhaps 1,500 pounds at the extreme upper end. This bear was more than twice that. It effectively doubled the largest bears we know today. Now, here's where the title comes in, and here's the comparison that stops me every time. Because when paleontologists looked at that weight estimate, around 1,700 kilograms, someone noticed something remarkable. That figure is almost identical to the estimated body mass of one of the most famous predatory dinosaur specimens in the world, Big Al, the beautifully preserved Allosaurus fragilis. The Allosaurus, the dominant predator of the late Jurassic, the so-called lion of its age, a two-legged, sharp-toothed hunting machine. This bear weighed as much as that dinosaur. Let that sink in. A bear, a member of the same family as the animals living in our forests today, reached the body mass of a large theropod dinosaur. When you picture Arctotherium angustidens at its full size, You should picture something in the same weight class as an Allosaurus, walking around in South America barely more than 1,000,000 years ago. So how? How did a bear get so absurdly dinosaur scale big? And the answer, as it so often is, comes down to two things: opportunity and isolation. For most of its history, South America was an island continent, cut off from North America, evolving its own strange and wonderful fauna in splendid isolation. And when the land bridge of Panama finally connected the two Americas in an event we call the Great American Biotic Interchange, animals began flooding across in both directions. The ancestors of Arctotherium were among the northerners who moved south, and when they arrived, they walked into a land of extraordinary opportunity. Because South America at that time was strangely short on large, specialized mammalian carnivores, of the kind that dominated other continents. There was a vacancy at the very top of the food chain, a huge protein-rich niche with almost nobody filling it. And Arctotherium angustidens filled it. With little competition for meat and a whole continent of large prey animals, giant ground sloths, glyptodonts, native hoofed mammals, available to a big enough predator, evolution did what it does when the resources are rich and the competition is thin. It made the animal bigger and bigger. Generation after generation, this bear grew into the gap, until it became the largest and most powerful land predator in the entire world at the time. As one of the scientists who studied it put it, and I love this line, this bear was so large and so dominant that it very likely lived free of fear of being eaten. Nothing could touch it. It was the apex, the top, the undisputed ruler of its world, with a body built on the same colossal scale as the great predatory dinosaurs that had ruled tens of millions of years before. And this was a genuine predator, at least at this early stage. That's part of what makes angustidens special. The name of its genus, the short-faced bears, refers to that distinctively shortened snout, which in this giant was even more pronounced against its huge skull. And this species, the earliest of its genus, was also the most carnivorous. Later bears in the same lineage would trend smaller and more omnivorous over time, an unusual evolutionary trajectory, shrinking rather than growing. But angustidens, the founder, was the giant, and it was the meat-eater. With powerful jaws capable of crushing bone and the sheer overwhelming mass to overpower nearly anything it chose to, it was an apex predator and an opportunistic feeder rolled into one, taking down prey, driving other predators off their kills, and eating meat, fish, and carrion, supplemented by whatever else the land offered. But here's the twist in the story, and it's a poignant one. Because being that big was not, in the long run, a winning strategy. And the very thing that made angustidens so magnificent is what doomed it. Think about what it takes to fuel a 3,800-pound body. An animal that size needs an enormous, constant supply of food just to keep itself alive. And that makes it exquisitely vulnerable to any change in its world. As time went on, the ecosystems of South America shifted. New competitors arrived, including big cats like the jaguar and the saber-toothed cats coming down from the north. Animals that could hunt more efficiently and compete for the same prey. And as competition for that protein-rich food increased, the giant bear was caught in a trap of its own making. Its immense size, once an advantage, became a liability. It simply needed too much. And a hyper-specialized giant in a changing world with rising competition is an animal living on a knife's edge. And so the largest bear that ever lived went extinct around 1 million years ago. Its own descendants tell the story of what worked instead. The later Arctotherium species got smaller and more flexible in their diets, better able to survive on a wider range of foods. Being a smaller, adaptable generalist beat being a magnificent, specialized giant. And the ultimate proof of that is alive today, because the last surviving member of this entire short-faced bear lineage is the spectacled bear of South America, a modest, mostly vegetarian, tree-climbing bear, a tiny fraction of its titanic ancestor's size. The dynasty that produced the largest land predator in the world ended up surviving through its smallest, humblest member. The giant died, the little vegetarian lived. And I think there's something genuinely profound in that, beyond just the spectacle of the size. Because Arctotherium angustidens is a perfect illustration of one of evolution's deepest lessons. The same lesson we saw with the dinosaurs, with Smilodon, with so many of the giants I've covered. Being the biggest, the most powerful, the most dominant is a magnificent strategy, right up until the world changes. And the world always changes. Size makes you the king, but it also makes you fragile. A huge, hungry, inflexible target for extinction the moment your world shifts beneath you. The meek, the small, the adaptable, they're the ones who inherit what comes next. But for a window of time, for over 1 million years, this animal stood as living proof that the dinosaurs didn't hold a monopoly on giant predators. That the mammals, given the right continent and the right opportunity, could produce a hunter to rival them. A bear that stood 11 feet tall, weighed as much as an Allosaurus, and ruled a continent without fear of anything. So the next time you look at a bear, even a big one at a zoo or in a nature documentary, I want you to remember that its family tree contains a monster. An animal that reached the scale of a predatory dinosaur. The biggest bear that ever lived was not some distant alien creature. It was a bear, just like the ones we know. It just happened to be built on the scale of a dinosaur. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep looking up.